So here in Fort Davis, I'm at Rattlers and Reptiles Reptile Museum, the largest rattlesnake museum on the planet. I'm here with the owner, Buzz Ross, and he's going to personally give me a tour of his museum. So we're in here inside the museum. It's nice and cozy in here. He's got an array of rattlesnakes, etc. So, Mr. Buzz Ross, my good buddy, tell me how you got started.
Well, I was about 3 years old in my grandfather's backyard. He had a garden, and I was collecting insects and anything I could put in a jar. And horned lizards were very prominent actually in Fort Worth when I grew up. Caught my first lion snake when I was 3. Fell in love with snakes. My grandmother had a bookstore and got me all the books on reptiles in the 50s and 60s. So I was very fortunate. My mother let me keep snakes in the house. Later on, I ended up running the reptile house in the Fort Worth Zoo. This place is basically modeled after them. This was a dream of 35 years that I always thought about doing this. We used to sit around the zoo in Fort Worth eating lunch going, gee, it'd be neat to have a reptile house in Fort Davis, Texas, and sure enough, 35 years later, I did it. So it's been a lot of fun doing this, a lot of fun building the exhibits. The exhibits were modeled after some of the stuff we had in Fort Worth. I opened it in '79 and finished it probably 2 years later. I did it piecemeal. Ended up with 29 cages, the largest collection of rattlesnakes by species in the world, or on the planet as the sign says. Actually, a friend of mine did that sign for me, and she was from Denmark, and we hadn't quite decided if we were going to put in the world or on the planet, and I walked out there and she'd already put the O up, so if we decided to go with on the planets, so we're stuck with that sign. These things have been a love of mine my whole life. I caught my first one at 13, snuck it in the garage. My mother found it, said, "What's that?" I said, "A rattlesnake," and she said, "Be careful." So I had a lot of support from my mother and my grandmother. So anyway, I grew up doing this. I ended up moving to Fort Davis. Went in partnership with a friend of mine that actually worked for me in the Fort Worth Zoo. We went in partnership with a taxidermy shop, and I did that for 20 years here, and then this has been in here 14 years. So it's been a love of mine. I do a lot of lectures to children. The basic idea of this whole setup is for education, to prove that these animals aren't the mean, bad monsters out there that are going to get you. There's only 10 to 12 deaths a year out of 8,000 bites. 2/3 of those are from 17 to 35-year-old males, alcohol related. So hold my beer and watch this. So they've got a real bad rap, and everybody comes in here and is all worried about the snakes and how dangerous it is hiking around here. There's been actually 2 accidental snake bites in Jeff Davis County in over 35 years. So you're not going to walk out here and get bit. You probably get struck by lightning first. You know, I tell everybody, well, how did you get here? Well, we drove. And I said, that's the most dangerous thing you've done today. So people don't realize that these things aren't sitting and waiting and going to run out and grab you. They'd rather go the other way. They do not like people. They want nothing to do with you. When you find one, he was asleep and you disturbed him and he doesn't know quite what to do. And as a defense mechanism, he'll get in a striking position and rattle his tail and make himself look as big as he can. And after that, if you stand there long enough, he'll settle down and crawl the other direction and get away from you. But if you force him into defending himself, he'll do that. Most people think that snakes strike these enormous amount of distances. They don't. A normal strike's about 1/3 of the length of the body. If you got one really ticked off, he might go half if he slides his body forward, but kind of like a spring, he can only go as far as he can stretch. So they're not anything to worry about. I've been catching them for years. I wear flip-flops while I'm catching them.
So I've got to ask Buzz, are we going to be able to get up close and personal with some of these rattlesnakes today?
We'll open a couple of cages and let you really get close.
All right, sounds good. What's your first choice?
I guess the Sidewinder here. Everybody's wants to know what a Sidewinder is, and everybody says, "Oh my God, didn't know." Aren't they bigger than that? No, they're not. 30 inches is the record on them. They're fairly small rattlesnake. Most of the rattlesnakes that you, only about 5 of them actually get over 5 feet. Most of them you encounter are small snakes. The species are small. They don't get very big at all. The majority of them are probably under 30 inches. And this is one of them. This is one of the interesting ones. Everybody knows what a sidewinder is. They actually, when they're moving across the sand, only 2 parts of their body are actually touching the surface at any one time. They'll go out at night, and I've followed their trails. It's kind of hard to tell which way they're going. And the first time I did it, I followed this snake, found where he buried himself in the sand, dug down in there, and there's no snake. I realized that what I was following was his trail home. So during the night, the sand had actually washed away his trail going to where he was hunting. They lay in the sand. When they raise their head, the little eyes, pyramids over their eyes, the sand will drop off of it. And so all that's sitting above the surface of the sand is the eyes. And they'll sit there and wait for a lizard to run by, and then when the lizard gets close enough, they just explode and grab it. So that's their feeding mechanism.
Beautiful snake.
They are really nice little snakes.